Hi guys and welcome to this video. Today we're going to be talking about Hogwarts Legacy and the specs that your PC needs to run the game. Now, this is from the Hogwarts Legacy Twitter page and they made this announcement yesterday. So we're just going to be going over some of the specs that you need to remember when you're trying to run the game. Now, these are the low specs and the recommended or high specs. We first have the basics. This is going to be applicable for everyone, which is the RAM, which is on low, it's recommended 16, and for storage, it's 85 gigabytes of hard disk drive. For the recommended, it's going up to a SSD. Usually a SSD is for better load times and maybe streaming in some assets from storage, but again, most people. Now the thing to take note is the CPU and GPU requirements. On the low specs, they are recommended the i5 6600 and the Ryzen 5 1400. The 6600 is a quad core, 4 cores, 4 threads. The Ryzen 5 1400 is also a quad core, but it is hyper threaded. Both of these have modest IPC and they are slightly older chips. I expect most people to be fine with them. The GPU for low specs is the GTX 960 4GB and the AMD Radeon 470 4GB. Now this is going to be a little controversial to me because the 960 is quite a bit weaker than the 470. The 960 does lose by about 30% at times to the 470. The 470 is more comparable to a R9 290X level GPU than the 960, but they are going with a minimum of 4 gigabytes of VRAM, and that is for 720p 30 FPS low quality settings. Most people should be fine if they are using this on a laptop and trying to run 720p on their laptops. We're going to see how it holds up. Another thing to note is that the game is DirectX 12, so we are not sure if the game will have shader compilation stutters, so be warned of that. Now into the recommended specs, they are going with the Ryzen 5 3600 and the 8700. Given that most people, based on the Steam hardware survey, are using 6 cores, 6 threads, that is perfectly fine. GPU requirements are the GTX 1080 Ti and or the Radeon 5700 XT or the Intel Arc A770. Now let's just get into the NVIDIA and AMD stuff. The 1080 Ti is quite a few years old now. I own one and a 6800 XT. I own 2 GPUs. Well, actually, I own more than 2 GPUs. I own 4 or 5 of them. But for my daily gaming, I use either my 6800 XT or my GTX 1080 Ti. The 1080 Ti is no longer a high-end GPU. It's 6-7 years old now, and the 5700 XT is basically superseded. And the reason I'm saying that is that if you go on PC Part Picker, you will see that you could pick up the RX 6600 for $230 for a few months now, and they've been as low as $180. From Text Power Up, they show in here that is within the normal range. 5700 XT is only 7% faster. In reality, with this boosting out of the box, most of the time it's going to be very much in line with these two. The 1080 Ti is 14% faster. That's not 100% accurate. The 1080 Ti does not get as many driver updates as it used to. So the fact is, all 3 GPUs here, all these GPUs perform within 10% of each other. Sometimes the 1080 Ti, if it's more optimized for older architecture, it'll be 10% faster. This will be 10% slower. But all these GPUs are within. So if you need a GPU upgrade because you're running something slightly old and you're trying to hit 1080p 60 FPS, the RX 6600 for $230, and if you could get them on sale for lower, usually sometimes they do hit $200, but prices are going back up due to low stocks. That's where it is. So that's perfectly acceptable for 1080p 60 FPS. I do think it's still a little bit high considering some things, but this is a graphically demanding game. And now we're going into the ultra specs. So ultra specs are targeting the higher resolution 1440p and 4K. At ultra specs, this is 1440p 60 fps. They want a Ryzen 5 5800X or a 10700K. The 10700K is not as powerful as the 5800X. It loses for a few frames, but they are both 8 core 16 threads. They are very fast CPUs, and they are recommended a 2080 Ti or AMD RX 6800 XT. Now, again, I don't know if this is based on ray tracing performance, but in ray tracing, the 2080 Ti, the 3070, and the 6800 XT all roughly perform equal in ray tracing. In rasterization, the 2080 Ti will be absolutely destroyed by the 6800 XT. The 6800 XT is about 35-40% faster in some cases. Usually it's about 25 to 30% across 16 to 20 game benchmarks. But the thing here is that we're not too sure if they're taking in ray tracing into account. This is just saying 1440p, SSD noted, and ultra quality settings. We don't know if ultra quality will turn on some form of ray tracing. But as you could see, when you go up into the higher categories, they are asking for a vastly bigger performance leap because they're looking for more cores, more threads. So they're going from 6 cores to 8 cores. So they're going from Ryzen 5s and i5s to basically the 8 core CPUs, which are the Ryzen 7s and, well, the 8 core Intel i7s. Now for 4K ultra specs, they want the same CPUs, 10700K, Ryzen 5800X, very normal. For the RAM, 32 gigabytes. Oh, let me just make a note of that. For the previous section, for the lower recommended specs, they only wanted 16. Here they want 32, so I'm not too sure if going up will increase your RAM usage. But usually once you have enough VRAM, that shouldn't be an issue. This game may be VRAM intensive because the ultra settings are going with the 2080 Ti and the 6800 XT, and both of those have a 11 gigabyte frame buffer for the 2080 Ti, and the 6800 XT has a 16 gigabyte frame buffer. And at 4K, they want a 3090 Ti or a 7900 XT. Both of those are very expensive GPUs. The 3090 Ti is on par with the 4070 Ti. Both of them are $900. The difference is the 4070 Ti doesn't do as well as 4K. It's just about 5% slower or 5% faster depending on the game. The 7900 XT is about $900 to $980 depending on which model you get. So the 4K is pretty aggressive, but all of these are for 60 FPS. Nothing has been mentioned about 120 FPS. Now, take note of this. We do not know if the game is going to support XESS or FSR as of yet. I believe that it should support some form of temporal upscaling besides DLSS, but we don't know that for sure. Basically, from what we see here, this is from overclockers going through their articles, right? It is currently unknown if it will support FSR 2.0 or the NVIDIA DLSS upscaler. So, wow, it's not even sure of DLSS. I usually assume DLSS is in most games, but that's kind of shocking that that hasn't been confirmed as yet. Hopefully there's a temporal upscaler because the game looks very, very heavy on the CPU and GPU. So we are going to need as much performance. Now, these are other sites. I can't confirm anything more than that, but most of you should be fine. Remember to take your time and fiddle with the settings. If ray tracing is on, we don't know how they have optimized the ray tracing. If we will have proper settings to tweak the ray tracing settings, like in Spider-Man, where you could lower down the geometric detail and the distance where objects will be rendered in, or if it's going to be like The Witcher where it's just an on and off switch and it's just completely destroying your performance. Also, the game is DirectX 12, so we have no clue if there's going to be horrible shader compilation stutters. Right? So just be careful about that. Make sure you pay attention to reviews before you purchase the game. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I hope this was informative for you. Goodbye.